Joey Gallo.
Welcome in to the Nsfw Dynasty podcast. I'm your host, Dave Reed, joined by my co-hosts, Ryan Wilkinson and Joey Gallo.
What's up, guys? How's everybody doing?
Hey, guys. 2.5 weeks to the first game of the season. Let's go.
Oh, I am pumped. I know. I cannot wait to be turning on Red Zone. And, guys, we got a very special episode today. A couple surprises later on in the pod, but first, I want to say we have a special guest on today, the unofficial commissioner of the most fantasy leagues in the world, because not only does he commission an ever-growing list of real and experimental leagues of all sizes, formats, and settings on Sleeper that I'm getting invites to constantly, and I've kind of lost track of. He is the overarching commissioner of the Fantasy Footballers Megla Bowl. We have Mr. Ray Smith on the call with us. What's going on? Welcome to the pod.
What's up? Glad to be here.
So, Ray, you want to tell the people how we met and what you thought of us? You met Joe and I back at a Fantasy Footballers live show back in the day.
Yeah. You guys sat right behind me, right?
That's right.
Yeah, that was interesting. I think, we had a water bet, right, that night? And who did I water? It was one of you two.
If it was me, I tried to block that out. It might have been. But yeah, we were at the live show, and it's kind of, to me, one of the cool things about fantasy football, like the community you met, like you get in that playing the game, and we were just sitting behind you, met you there. You intro us to your NYC Foot Clan League, and we've kind of been friends ever since. We've been in a bunch of leagues all over the place. You and I actually are co-managing a bunch of leagues. I think you may co-manage with Joe at a couple. I did get to join the Dynasty Junior, Dino Junior League with you, which has been a ton of fun because that's become a pretty popular league that people like to talk about. So, the community is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
I've been thinking about it for the last probably minute and a half since you said it, what that water bet was. And I don't remember the players, but it was, we were waiting in line to get in, and we were arguing between two guys, and we said when we got up to the front to meet the ballers,
I do remember
we were going to ask them to break the tie for us.
I think I won that, actually.
And I can't remember.
I don't think it was good players, too. It was like deep in the rankings. Deep in the rankings. Like we were deep cuts in that.
At the end of the podcast, if I just randomly interject, it'll be because I remembered.
Yeah,
one or two of the guys.
There's been a couple water bets over the years. I think one I got Ray on recently was the Aaron Rodgers one, which I felt pretty good about. That was before he was on the Jets, but just not out there. But anyway, moving on.
Gave me no injury relief on that one.
That's right. You didn't ask for it. Kind of want to give a little interview of our special guest because, he holds a prestigious role. So I guess, how did you originally get involved with the Fantasy Footballers?
So it's a funny story because originally when the Sleeper app came out, we had channels, if you remember, and I had created the Foot Clan channel, which all of a sudden overnight grew to like 30,000 people in a channel that it was constant. I mean, people were posting on that. There were like 30 posts a day at one point, and I was the sole person managing that kind of forum for them. And I had reached out to Andy. I was like, hey, what do you want me to do with this? Do you want to send me stuff to post? And they did. And then eventually after a couple of weeks, I was like, so can I get into the listener league? And I was like, yeah, sure. So that's how I got in with them. And then the next year after I had played in the listener league, Jason had found out that I was running I had some 96 team leagues that were similar to the format of the Megala Bowl, but obviously way smaller. And he reached out and DM'd me, was like, oh, do you want to like manage our own super league? And I was like, sure, no problem. And I hadn't really realized how many people would kind of jump on that first year. In the first year, we had 660 people managing it through ESPN with single invites, putting in everybody's email address. And that was probably the busiest year still to this date for the Megalo Bowl.
I remember you like hopping on your computer. I think we were at like a bar just because like random things were breaking down in certain leagues or people were dropping players and you had to like jump in and save it. It was like the most unmanageable experience.
Yeah, I mean, when you have that many people in like a fantasy tournament, like it only takes one person out of 600 to do something stupid, and now all of a sudden, as the commissioner, I mean, it's the same thing in any of our home leagues or leagues we're playing. Like if something goes wrong, it's like, all right, the commissioners have to step in and deal with it right away. So that was a lot. We have more systems in place now.
Yeah.
But
so
that was a crazy experience.
So tell us more about the Mega Bowl, like where it grows, because obviously it's a lot more than 600 now, and it's no longer on ESPN. So why don't you tell us about it? How many teams, leagues, the format, the prizes, and how you possibly manage over all of that?
Yeah, so there are going to be over 20,000 people who play in it this year. We keep growing. I think that this year we'll probably top the next threshold, which I think is 30,000.
Jesus,
we'll see then. The way that it's broken down is you get placed into 12-man leagues. So you do the draft and you play out your regular season the same way you would any other 12-person league. With trades, transactions, the whole nine. And then when playoffs come, that's where it kind of gets different. All the playoff teams, which this year in the Megalo Bowl is going to be 6 playoff teams. But previously we've only done 3. So we're kind of opening up the playoff pool. And all those playoff teams go into just a list. And you have to score in the top 50%. It's kind of like a 50-50. You have to score in the 50% to move on to the next week. And it goes all the way up until championship week 17, right?
Yeah.
And the person who puts up the most amount of points, they're crowned champion. They get a spot in the listener league for next year. And now will get a UDK for life, which is their ultimate draft kit.
That's awesome. And for those that don't know, the Listener League with the fantasy footballers, it's kind of what it sounds like. You get to play in a league with the host of the fantasy footballers, and I think it was a 14-team league. So 3 spots are by the host. If you win the league, you get to stay in it, and all the other spots are open to fans. They give away spots for certain promos and other submissions to get in. So it's a pretty prized possession because there's like thousands and like tens of thousands of people trying to get a spot for that.
They had over 1,000 individual submissions this year,
which is nuts.
Which is
and
wild.
People put a lot of effort into it too, which is crazy.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of like the videos and websites that people make. It's insane.
Yeah. I've thought about trying to do it. I'm like, I just don't even think I'm capable of competing with these people, so I don't even attempt it.
I got completely lucky.
Yeah, well, you also earlier on. I don't think they were as big yet back then.
Right.
What would you say, I guess, is the toughest part of the job now that you're on the Sleeper platform? Obviously, when it was in ESPN and it was a little bit more all over the place, it was tougher. It's a little bit more organized these days, but what's the toughest part?
The toughest part is probably I deal with so many issues that pop up because it's thousands of leagues, right? So I deal with so many issues that pop up. It's hard to, when I find that person that's kind of causing trouble, I find it a little bit difficult to deal with that over and over and over again and not get very annoyed.
Yeah. That's why you got the high life in your hand, right? What nuances or strategies for this year or that are in the tournament? Because I think last year there were no trades, if I remember correctly.
Right. So the funny thing about this year is I think the best strategy is just going to be treating it like every other 12-person league you're in, because you still need to build the best team. You still need to put up the most points in the final week, right? You need to get to the playoffs. There's nothing really different besides that last week of putting up the most amount of points. And you can't play season long with the same strategy for that one last week. Mm-hmm. So you just have to hope that your players go off that last week, but you have to treat it the same just to get to that last week.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm sure a lot of people are thinking of it as like best ball, but if you're not in that final week, it doesn't even
No.
matter. You can't predict what's going to
Right.
happen between now and then.
I think the most successful teams are going to be the ones that just they grind, they use a sound strategy when it comes to 12-man leagues, and just grind it out. Just keep winning go week by week. Don't go shoot for upside. I mean, you need upside to win, but don't go crazy with it like in best ball.
And how can any of our listeners get involved in this and be one of the potentially 30,000 contestants in the league?
So I need to plug another podcast in order to say.
That's fine.
So you would need to be a supporter of the Fantasy Footballer. So you could either support them on Patreon or support them directly through the website now. And that's how you get your entry into the league. Everybody who supports is able to join.
And when can they sign up for this?
Signups are live.
Oh, and for those that don't know, it is August 19th today, Monday.
So it has not been announced yet, but signups are live.
All right. Well, our pod will drop most likely tomorrow if you're listening to this or later. So by the time you're listening, it hopefully is live. And we're all about supporting the rest of the fantasy community. A lot of our content is based on the stuff that we read from fantasy footballers and other ones. So happy to support them any way we can there. Any other advice that you potentially have for any of the listeners, or just trash talk you want to throw out at the very end?
I'm better than you and Joey.
I don't like that. But I don't have a Foot Clan title yet. I've been so close so many times. 1 year. I've been in the finals, not last year, but 3 straight years. But anyway, that stung. Thank you for that interview. Riveting. But it is exciting. I love the Megala Bowl every year. I'll be playing as well. I think I just missed. I think it was 4th in my league last year, so I just missed the playoff cutoff. So that one stung. But I'm excited for the expanded one. That means I should hopefully get in this year. We'll see. But with that, we're going to keep moving on. After that interview, we're going to jump in and try to give you some extra ways to potentially win. That's for redraft, but win your dynasty leagues now. So as we mentioned, the season's going to start very soon, and this is the best time to maximize the value of your players before the season starts in Dynasty. Because everyone has these preconceived notions of what their player's going to do, how the season's going to go. We know exactly what's going to happen. There's no stats to prove us wrong. So this is the time where you can take advantage, and you can either get out on players who are about to lose all their dynasty value, like Eckler last year, and trade them in for a player who will either hold value or potentially explode this upcoming year, kind of like Kyron. And actually last year, you could have traded Eckler for Kyron and a whole boatload more, and you would have made out pretty well there. Because being caught holding the bag on an older player who turns into a dud can really derail any dynasty team. But alternatively, if you hit on an overlooked dynasty diamond, it can expedite a rebuild or put a team over the top. And we're all going to give you one dynasty diamond, one dynasty dub. But just as a couple of calls that we made last year, a couple of players that we said that we were going to buy as a dynasty diamond, Jalen Warren, Michael Pittman, and Kyron. Joe actually put his money where his mouth is and made a trade for Kyron. So he really came out big there. Some sells or duds that we had were T. Higgins, Garrett Wilson, who he definitely was. He was a top 4 asset last year. So I definitely think if you traded him, you probably made out well on the year. But I know Ray probably feels differently there. He's a big Jets and Garrett Wilson guy. Justin Fields was also a sell, which, man, did that guy's value plummet. So that would have been a great time to sell. A couple other ones, hits or misses, depending how you feel. We had Elijah Moore as a buy. That was a miss. Jameson Williams, I think, was a buy. Also a miss.
He's coming back now, though.
He might be a buy this year.
Yeah.
He might be a buy still.
I thought about it.
Sure. And Derrick Henry as a sell, who honestly, he held value. He definitely was down from where you thought Derrick Henry would have been, but he's held value longer than I think some of us thought. But with this, let's jump right into it. And honestly, I'm going to give it to our special guest first. Why don't you give us one of your duds or diamonds?
All right. So, what if I told you that the best 2024 wide receiver prospect isn't Marvin Harrison Jr.? Say it's neighbors, right?
Oh, yeah, of course. Giants fans here.
No. It's Rome Odunze. So, Rome was a high-volume X receiver, and the Washington offense ran through him, right? He was the number one target, best player on the team. Of the big three, talking Marv, Neighbors, and Rome, right? He was the most well-rounded and dominant when you look at their route trees and how successful they were against zone, man, at all levels of the field. He can separate himself as the primary option for Caleb Williams, I think, pretty early on, because I think that Rome, you can make the argument that Rome is the best wide receiver on the Browns right now.
Also the Bears.
Oh,
but probably the Browns as well. I don't disagree with the statement.
The Browns have no one, so
he would be, yes, he would be the best on the Browns as well. So he wins at all levels. He has an 89% contested catch rate. Made Penix look great. Caleb Williams doesn't even have to be accurate for Rome to be successful. Of the big three wide receivers, right? Because I'm looking at this for Dynasty, right?
Yep.
Right now, Rome is going the third, right? And it's pretty definitive, right? He has the most stable QB situation of the three of them. Like, yes, Tyler is considered a franchise guy, but I think there's a little bit more. There's some more questions there that we're not really solid on him. Otherwise, Kyler would be this top 10 dynasty pick, which he's not. So most stability of the three. He's got the I'm sorry.
Oh, it's all right. I mean,
losing my spot.
He's talented, but what would you say if another wide receiver on his team just signed a long extension?
Listen, I think DJ Moore is a good wide receiver. Rome Odunze has the ability to be an elite wide receiver.
Yeah, I don't disagree. We've seen DJ Moore.
We know what DJ Moore is. I mean, he can be very productive, but the elite dynasty wide receivers play X wide receiver, right? They're on the outside, right? That's where they want the offense to flow through. He may not have the best fantasy season this year, but that's what makes him a buy now. It's because I don't think it's the big three, right? I think it's Rome Odunze 1, and then the other two.
Well, you're speaking music to Joey's ears. He got him in our league of record in this pod. So, Joe, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure how involved Keenan Allen will be personally. Maybe super involved. Frankly, I don't really know. But there's something to be said for guys that come like rookies that start on teams at the same time as each other. And you can already kind of tell that he and Caleb are forging like a pretty solid relationship between the two of them. He's getting tons of looks in the preseason, and he's coming down with them, making big plays. So, I think kind of like Ray was just saying, I think especially from a big play standpoint, it's going to be Rome most likely getting the majority of the downfield looks, when the alternative are guys like Keenan and DJ Moore. So my hopes are high. I wouldn't say he's maybe the best of the three. I think DJ probably, from a dynasty standpoint, is pretty formidable after that last contract that he just signed, but my hopes are pretty high.
Yeah, I have to say I did a little research into DJ Moore because I was actually going to pick him as my dynasty dud because of Odunze. I just felt like having him there and Keenan Allen there. I know DJ Moore signed the big contract, but there's a lot of target competition, and I do think Rome can be that guy. So, we'll see what happens with DJ Moore. So I like the pick. I agree with Ray there.
Yeah. I mean, DJ Moore does feel like the boomer bust player on that team. Like that's kind of what he's been. He's not super consistent, but he ends the year with a ton of points. Rome seems like he could be more of the stabilizing. I can't even get the word stabilizing force on that team for Caleb moving forward. Which honestly, going forward is like a lethal combo for Caleb, which maybe foreshadowing till later in the pod. But with that, Ryan, why don't you give us one of your diamonds or duds?
Yeah, so I'll go with my dud since I did almost put DJ Moore, but instead of DJ Moore, I decided to go with Dalton Kincaid. And
oh no!
I am a Bills fan. I do like the Bills, but Kincaid is currently ranked as the number 3 tight end on Keep Trade Cut, and even though he finished last year as tight end number 11, and as the number 3 ranked tight end, his value can't really go up too much, but I think there's a good amount of risk that it could go down by the end of this year. And I think a lot of people were really into rookie tight ends last year, and Kincaid's value has been bumped up a little bit by the season that Laporta had. Looking at the numbers, he finished as a top 10 tight end in only 6 of the 16 games he played in. He was only a top 5 tight end twice. And although he's currently the number 3 tight end, he never finished as a top 3 tight end in fantasy until week 18 of last year. And the reason he's ranked so high, Dave and I talked about this a little bit, but it's because of the departures of Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. Everyone's assuming that opens the door to a larger target share. And
to be fair, Gabe Davis departed like week 8 last year.
Yeah, Gabe Davis had 0 targets some weeks, so I don't know how much is getting opened up there, but he did only score 2 touchdowns last year on 91 targets and 9 red zone targets, so there could be some positive regression there. But Kincaid was really at his best when Dawson Knox wasn't on the field, and Knox isn't going anywhere. Kincaid averaged 7.4 targets, 6.2 catches, and 56 receiving yards per game, and scored both of his touchdowns when Knox was sidelined. But when Knox played, Kincaid averaged just 4.9 targets, 3.8 catches, and 35 receiving yards per game. So that's a massive difference. So assuming Knox is healthy and playing every game, you're looking at the lower end. On top of that, the Bills' offense became more balanced after Joe Brady replaced Ken Dorsey as offensive coordinator. I think they are going to run more this year. When you lose your top 2 wide receivers and you have James Cook, you're probably going to run the ball a little more. So, the Bills ran the ball 52.9% of the time on their last 7 games under Joe Brady, and they went 6-1. So you have to assume more of the same is coming. Add in the fact that he also had some injuries causing him to miss some time, and I wouldn't be caught paying the number 3 tight end price tag for Kincaid right now.
Oh, man. A lot of fantasy community and Dynasty especially are going to be big mad at you, Ryan. So I don't know. I think it deserves
That's a spicy meatball!
That's a spicy take, man. I don't know. No, I don't disagree either because I like Kincaid a lot, but at where he's in, people are viewing him as like a wide receiver versus like a tight end with those targets. So it seems like he might be a little rich right now. And I do know that, and we were talking about this the pod before we started, is that when targets disappear, you more often than not they don't actually go to catch the wide receiver core or tight ends. They actually go to running back. So James Cook is probably the bigger beneficiary of Diggs leaving. So can't give that all to Kincaid there.
Yeah, exactly. I like him, and I think long term he's a decent tight end. I just don't know if he's already the number 3 dynasty tight end.
Yeah, I would say to play devil's advocate, I like Dave said, I do think he'll line up a lot as more of like running wide receiver routes rather than tight end routes. I think he'll be on the field with Dawson Knox a decent amount of the time. Dawson Knox already injured in the preseason, might be out for a little while. I just don't think. I think that I kind of buy into the Bills looking to, or maybe not even the Bills, but just Josh Allen looking for familiarity and guys that he trusts to throw the ball to early on in the season when he doesn't really. I mean, Curtis Samuel is new and
Khalil
Coleman,
Shakir, baby.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible, right? I mean,
Who knows, really?
Who
yeah.
knows?
But yeah, I lean more with your side, Ryan, that for this year specifically and in the near term, he's not worth that price.
Especially in the tight end landscape. There's just so many tight ends now too that to break into top three is becoming tougher and tougher.
Top three puts him over Mark Andrews, right?
Yeah, I don't know. That's my biggest thing.
tough.
If you're top three, there's just a lot of competition there to get there.
Like Kincaid's going to be the starter, and I think he's a very good player. But to have him over Mark Andrews and I also think George Kittle's one of the best tight ends out there.
But you got
it's
McBride still, and these are young guys. We're talking Laporta. We're not like Kelsey. Obviously, I think this year will be better. He's older, but the other guys are still young for tight end.
Right, and they've done it before. We really haven't seen Kincaid do it.
Exactly.
There is a possibility, but to pay that price now,
yeah, I can't do it. Joey, why don't you give us a diamond or dud here?
Yeah, so I think I'll jump in with my dud because I want to save my diamond until after Ryan does his diamond.
Foreshadowing. We're a big foreshadow pot here. I don't know if you guys knew that.
Yeah. And also because I have a lot more conviction about my dud, who is Rachaad White, running back from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Sorry.
No.
Touch early.
So in Dynasty startups right now, just kind of like a lay of the land of where he's going. His ADP in startups is 42nd overall, RB12, which I think is surprising. Going before James Cook, going before Jonathan Brooks, going before Derrick Henry, going before DeAndre Swift. And not to say that all of these guys are necessarily locked and loaded dynasty assets for years and years to come, but I think that with the running back position specifically, I don't know. The way that I generally play is 1 to 2 years forward looking at the most. So, even someone like Derrick Henry, I personally would value significantly more than Rachaad White. So my case against Rachaad is a little bit of talent versus opportunity. I just the whole reason why Rachaad White found himself into so much value last season was tons and tons and tons of opportunity, specifically in the passing game. But over the last 2 seasons, he played 17 games in each of the last 2 seasons, only averaged 3.7 and 3.6 yards per carry, respectively. He's not very explosive. His explosiveness metrics are kind of in the same tier as Zeke Elliott.
Boom. Roasted.
I think that overall the offense, and this is more my own take, but I think the offense overperformed quite a bit last year under offensive coordinator Dave Canales. But he has moved on, and I think they're a prime regression candidate this season. Baker Mayfield had probably his most productive fantasy season last year as well. And I know that the targets are there. They were there last year, but I personally, I don't want to be hitching on to a running back who is inefficient, who I think is going to be in a bad offense, who I think is going to be with I know he's going to be with a new offensive coordinator. And I don't want to have to, I guess, hope that he can dink and dunk his way into another RB1 season. I think that at a certain point, talent has to matter and win out. And someone else on the roster, although there really isn't a ton of RB depth behind him, which that would be the only real counterpoint here, is that there's not really anybody else who's going to be nipping at his heels for carries or, looking to take opportunity away from him. Maybe Bucky Irving, who's a little bit undersized, but if they're just going to run screens and dump the ball off, maybe he can give Rachaad White some competition in the backfield. So to sum it up, my take is he's just not a very good running back. He was not very good in his rookie season. He was not very good last year. And because he managed to, catch a bunch of dumped off screen passes and, do something with the opportunity that he was given in the offense, he was able to produce for fantasy despite being a bad running back. So I think he will continue to be bad. And I think that it will matter this year, similar to how it did 2 years ago. And I don't think that he will return on his RB12 draft position. To me, last year he finished RB7. I think that is the tippy top of the ceiling of all ceilings for him. And a more realistic outcome this year is probably a mid to low range RB2.
He's bad and he should feel bad is what Joe wants to get out there. Brian, I believe you are the owner of Rachaad White. How you feeling?
Do. Yeah. It hurts. No, I agree with the take that he's not the best running back. I don't think anyone's sitting here saying he's a talented running back and you're drafting him based on, his skills like a Christian McCaffrey. But, it like Joe said, it all comes down to the opportunity. And if someone starts to eat into that opportunity, then he's going to be screwed. If he can hold on to all the opportunities he had last year, I think he can still produce a decent season. But, I think Joe's right where he's being drafted right now. If we were doing our startup draft today, would I draft him as the RB12? No, probably not. But, we got him way later last year. So I think it makes sense. It all just comes down to how many opportunities he's going to get this year because he's not that good. So he needs a lot of opportunities.
I think he's being drafted right now at his ceiling. I think his ceiling is RB12. Last year he was 15th in points per game. He played the whole season. So that's why he got the bump to running back 7. But that's not as helpful as having H-N, right, for his shorter season. But game breaking.
Don't get Dave started.
Get me hot in here.
He'll give you those week winning performances. Like Rachaad White, yes, he has the volume, but he doesn't have the explosiveness to give the upside that you need for your RB1.
He's a perfectly fine RB2, RB3 option, but exactly like you said, I wouldn't be comfortable with him as my RB1.
I'm sure his mom likes him, but this pod apparently does not. It's okay. I'll jump in here. Do a little teaser here. So, Patriots, they have a history of an utter mess at drafting wide receivers like Thornton and N'Keal Harry. Their current wide receiver room runs about 11 deep. They also just hit the reset button on the quarterback again with Drake May and was one of the worst offenses in the league last year and predicted to be again so this year. But I'm saying there's finally reason to get excited in here, people, because Jalen Polk. So if you've been listening to the pod, which I hope you have been, I am a big Polk guy. I've been teased it up in the rookie preview. Then after the NFL draft, I got even more excited because he was picked with the 5th pick in the 2nd round, 37th overall. Yet he's still only being viewed as the wide receiver 49 in keep trade cut last time I looked. And I've seen him fall as far as the 3rd round in rookie drafts, which is just disrespectful. Polk was getting a lot of hype going into the NFL draft because he's a straight ball, I guess. He can line up anywhere, on the line, off the line, outside, flank, or slot. He blocks, he does everything. The coaches are going to love him. And he can get open at all 3 levels of the field. He's got excellent route running. He's arguably the best hands in the class. He has no drops in his reception perception sample and came down with 85% of his contested catches. And if you've been following camp reports, that pre-draft momentum that he had is only continuing as he's consistently being viewed as the wide receiver 1 for the Patriots by all the beat reporters. If you go on Twitter or X or whatever they call it these days, search his name and you'll see highlight after highlight of Polk getting open and or making these big pass plays. It's beautiful to see. It's basically one of my favorite tweets. He also is clearly becoming best buds with the QB of the future in May as well. And I think we alluded to Rome becoming best friends with the quarterback who was drafted in the same class as him. Well, we got the same case here with the Patriots, and that's the kind of chemistry coming out of the draft that can create the dream scenario where you have a long-term wide receiver one who gets an eventual massive target share, and that's what I'm expecting out of Jalen Polk going forward. His style of play is very similar to Puka, who also played at Washington before going to BYU, and it's a comp that Harmon made, and I do want to specify he is not saying Polk is Puka. He's not saying that at all. He's saying that they are in the same style of wide receiver. So got to, asterisk that a little bit. I don't want people getting too excited there. But clearly that type of wide receiver arc works in the NFL. And he, again, has a clear path to be the number one in New England because all the other wide receivers think there. And that will remain for years to come. He's still someone you can get super cheap. And I truly think he's someone who can help you, not this year especially, but it would not shock me if 3 years we look back and he is the wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4 out of this draft class. I'm not expecting it. I just want to say I don't saying he's better than Rome and Marr, Harris, and Neighbors, but I say he could potentially do it if one of those other guys disappoints. So Jalen Polk, get him while it's hot. Let's go.
Yeah,
I love this.
Yeah,
I think that So
love Polk.
when I look at wide receivers, right, especially prospects, right, the ability to separate is like the number one thing that I care about. I think that it leads to success in the NFL, right? And you have to be in the NFL and play on the field to get fantasy points. And not only that, you're open to catch the ball, right? So he combines that with high draft capital, right, and opportunity on his team. It's crazy that he's going so late. You don't have the draft costs of paying up for N'Keal Harry first overall, right? Or the hype behind him. You get him cheap. He's somebody that if he got drafted by a team, you know what, you could probably get him from that person's team pretty easily. You don't have to pay a big price. I'm very much
not for me though.
I was gonna say, Dave, what's the price?
We'll see.
Untouchable.
I mean, my concern might just be more so the sheer volume of wide receivers in that room right now, and he only played
quantity, not quality.
He only played 13% of the starter snaps in their preseason game this weekend, which was a little concerning to me, as I actually caught the beginning of that game, and I was wondering where the F he was based upon everything that we were hearing from practice and camp, that he was like trending to be a starter, but yet he wasn't playing with the starters in the preseason.
Not worried about that.
I'm literally just playing.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
And maybe these are opportunities to.
That's what you tell to the person you're trying to trade to.
Yeah.
But I think that was just that they were giving respect to the vets, but the vets also.
I mean, it's possible,
yeah.
Right? I mean, yeah. They have a lot of just mid to mid wide receivers on the team.
I looked at their depth chart. I think it's literally 11 guys. That's just like stupid. That's too many.
Yeah,
and none of them are
scared. Interesting. There's gonna be several of them that get cut.
Oh yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like he's going to. It's not like KJ Osborne is going to beat him out.
None of these guys are going to beat him. Who's going to beat him? Name one guy. No.
Yeah.
There's no one. I got to get a polka drop. That's what I need. All right. Well, now that I'm all giddied up, let's toss it back over to Ray. So you had your diamond, so we're going to get real negative here, and I'm excited to see the responses to this.
So, all right. Let me preface this a little bit. I think that this player is a very good NFL player. Right? We're talking about fantasy here, right? And I'm talking about CJ Stroud, right? Right now he's being drafted, right, and valued as the QB4, right? In Superflex Dynasty, right? He's going the 4th pick, right? I mean, listen, that's an average. He could be going over Hurts or Mahomes, right? And to me, that's crazy. Stroud has not put up the numbers that these guys have, right? He doesn't have the ceiling. I don't think many people are going to challenge me on that, the other top three, right? But I want to talk about the guys behind him, right? So first one is Lamar, right? So when you look at quarterbacks and the top quarterbacks, when they give you an advantage, right? They give you that week winning performance, right? So 25 plus, right? Not might be a kind of a low bar, but that's the number that we're going to use right now, right? So last year, Lamar had 8 of 25 plus fantasy points, right? And granted, with Lamar, some other running back quarterbacks, you might get a little bit more variance, but Stroud only had 3, right? And yes, he did play a little less games, right? Let's go to Burrow, right? Burrow played 6 games. I think 6 games left, depending on what you considered Stroud's injury, which games you attribute to that, right? Burrow had the same amount of 25 plus point games than Stroud, or had the same amount, right? All of Stroud's hype, right? You talk about Diggs, Nico, which I love Nico Collins, right? And Tank Dell, they're all very good weapons, right? Are they better than Burrow's weapons? Like, sure, maybe, but I don't think you can say that for sure. And Stroud's going almost a full round over Burrow in drafts. The point I'm trying to make is that Stroud is being overvalued for the hype and how good he looked on the field when it really did not translate to fantasy points. Some of the younger guys behind him, Anthony Richardson, Caleb Williams, they have much higher ceilings because of the rushing potential. All the top QBs, they're a true advantage. Hurts, Mahomes, even he's proven that even without his leg, he can do it consistently and put up big numbers. Lamar, Allen, right? We've seen Burrow have elite seasons. Even Dak, right? We have not seen Stroud put up tons of points yet. And yes, he's young, but you are projecting this when you're taking him with those top 4 guys. And it's crazy to value him that high. Go grab a elite wide receiver, elite running back, and your team will be better for it.
That's a spicy meatball!
Nice.
So I got to jump in here. True story. I was with my friend Brian tonight, and he did a startup dynasty draft, paid league, like legit people involved. And he said CJ Stroud went first overall. It's a super flex league. And I think that just goes to show you how crazy the hype has gotten for him. You know, you have some people taking him over literally Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, which is just crazy.
God,
Yeah, and
like
even if you were to like trade Stroud to that person, you know what I mean? Like we in one league last year, Dave, you and I, we traded Stroud for Dak and a first round pick. So go get those assets that will make your team better to build around those type of quarterbacks, because they're not the ones that are going to be giving you those week winning performances.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Dynasty is all about we've talked about it, I think last year. It's kind of like the stock market. Like whenever you see an opportunity where someone's just overvalued, doesn't mean we don't like the player itself. It's just way too overvalued. So like sell it, get what you can plus some, and that's the whole thing. CJ Stroud, you could get an elite quarterback and some, which is insane. Do that. That's definitely
That's wild.
The range of outcomes where you end up regretting that is very, very minimal. Like he has to turn into Patrick Mahomes / Joe Burrow consistently for the next several seasons at a minimum, for you to regret choosing, like Ray said, a top end wide receiver or a running back, and then taking a mobile quarterback later on.
Well, total agreement here, man. Right. Why don't you jump in? Because you're at the same position, I believe, with your Dynasty Diamond here.
Yeah, so I got another quarterback. I think my guy is already really considered a diamond, but I think he can shine even brighter than where he's currently ranked. So for my Dynasty Diamond, I went with Jordan Love. He's currently QB number 9 on
God, let me
Keep
play the
Trade
drop, man.
Ready, go again. Jordan Love.
That's a Zelda rupee, if anyone fans out there knew what it was. I couldn't find a diamond, so that was the closest I could get.
It works. So yeah, he's currently ranked as the QB 9, and I think he can push top 5, maybe even top 3 in the near future by the end of this season or next season. He threw for 37 touchdowns and rushed for 4 touchdowns last year. But the important part is that 27 of his touchdowns came after week 10. And we have to remember that last season was his first full season as a starting QB. So the slow start could be attributed to that. And from weeks 8 through 18 last year, he was a top 4 fantasy quarterback. He averaged 21.1 points per game. Simply put, he caught fire after week 9. And for the stat heads out there, from week 9 on, among 36 qualifying quarterbacks, he was 4th in passer rating, 6th in fantasy points per dropback, and 6th in clean pocket passer rating. He also performed well in 2 playoff games. He scored 17 and 29 fantasy points. I just think if he continues on that path, or if he improves in 2024, he could vault into that top tier QB dynasty ranking. Right now, guys like Kyler Murray, Anthony Richardson, Caleb Williams, and Jaden Daniels, who both haven't played a real NFL snap, are ranked around where Love is going, and Love's proven that he can put up, top 5 QB numbers on a consistent basis. He's also only 25 years old, and he's in Green Bay, where every quarterback to start a full season over the last 30 years has been Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, and now Jordan Love. So I think you can get him now, and he could turn into that top tier dynasty QB.
God damn Green Bay. They're so
Yeah,
good at quarterbacks.
I think for me the biggest thing is just like how much what do you say, he rushed for 4 touchdowns last year. Like, does he continue to look to rush more, and does that number grow a little bit? Yeah, I feel like for me that would be like what he would kind of need in order to take it to the next level and get into that top tier.
Yeah, I mean, if he rushes more, that obviously definitely improves, his outlook. But if you just look at the second half of the season, if he does that for a full season, he's a top 3 fantasy quarterback. So, it depends which Jordan Love you're going to get, the first half of the season or the second half of the season. But I think he has the potential to vault into that top 5 range.
Even with the slow start, he still finished with over 4,100 passing yards, 32 passing touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. But he did have those 4 touchdowns in Florida. He was a QB5 with a bad start. Obviously, injuries impact everything, and he got to play the full 17 games. But with his weapons there, he seems like someone who can consistently get over 4,000 mark, which you need, and then over 30 passing touchdowns pretty consistently. And it's funny, and the reason I teed this up out of CJ Stroud, you want CJ Stroud to be Jordan Love. That's like what you hope it would be. But Jordan Love is not viewed anywhere near the same tier as CJ Stroud yet. He's like a back end QB1 generally viewed as. So I think that's where the upside is like if he just does what he doesn't, even if he doesn't level up, he's better than what he's currently being valued at.
Yeah, no, it's exactly what I'm getting at. CJ Stroud is being drafted way before him, and Jordan Love has proven that he can put up the numbers, but he also has a lot of young weapons, which I know Joe is high on. So Joe, why don't you go into your Dynasty Diamond?
Yeah. So I went with Christian Watson for my Dynasty.
Quick trigger now, guys.
Yeah. And yeah, I was looking for somebody who I thought, like could be acquired at this point for a reasonable price, and has a decent amount of upside relative to his current perceived value in the market. And after debating a couple different guys, landed on Christian Watson, who is currently the wide receiver 40 in Dynasty startup drafts. He's going behind Brian Thomas Jr., who we've yet to see play a single NFL snap. Uh, Behind Jackson Smith and Jigba, who disappointed pretty significantly in his rookie year, and who a decent amount of people from a dynasty standpoint are out on at this point. I wouldn't say that I'm one of them, but there is definitely a large contingent of people who are out on him. Terry McLaurin, who I feel like we've been waiting for Terry McLaurin to reach his full potential since he came into the league. I think that Christian Watson gets a bad rap, well, and maybe deservedly so, based upon the fact that he's had a hard time staying on the field and consistently suffered from soft tissue, or more specifically hamstring injuries.
His legs are fixed now, though, right?
Well, that's the thing, right? Like he definitely there was this conversation about how in the off season he saw several doctors trying to look for answers to address kind of the root cause of why he kept suffering these hamstring injuries. I doubt they found like the magic solution. But I know they also like have a new strength and conditioning like trainer like in Green Bay as well. And it wasn't just him who was suffering quite a bit of soft tissue injuries last year. Aaron Jones has a history, and a lot of other guys on the team too. So maybe it was something they were doing, and maybe you buy into this hype of him finding the magic solution to prevent hamstring injuries in the offseason. But when he's on the field, 2022, he wasn't on the field a ton early season, but started playing around week 10. So if you call week 10 kind of his breakout week, 10 through 18 in 2022, he averaged 7 targets a game. And with those 7 targets a game, had yards per catch games of 26, 27, 21, 16. So when he comes down with the ball, it's almost always a big play. 2023, his average depth of target, 15 yards, would put him number 6 in the league in terms of ADOT. He averaged 11 fantasy points per game over the 9 games that he participated in. His expected fantasy points per game was closer to 15. So I just kind of feel like there's a lot of hype around guys like Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks, and even the tight ends Luke Musgraves. And I think we're forgetting that Christian Watson is the number 1 receiver when he's on the field for this team. He's definitely the most talented, and if he's out there, he'll demand the targets. So I personally think that you're kind of making a bet on him staying healthy this year. If he does stay healthy this year, he's going to return substantially on the cost right now that you're paying to roll him out there. So Christian Watson, I think, to me is worth a dice roll. I think like that's kind of especially at the wide receiver position too. If you can acquire him right now for somebody who you don't believe in, or somebody who's doesn't have the same upside, I think there's a lot of upside to be had here.
I love the thought of Christian Watson scouring the earth, going to all different crazy doctors, trying to find a solution. Kind of like Doctor Strange. He's like going to like crazy monks, just like what is this problem with me? Someone's got to know it. So hopefully he found the right witch doctor or something. But I do agree. There's a lot of upside to be had there. Ryan mentioned there's just so many weapons, and we don't really know who the wide receiver one there is. Everyone's kind of making guesses. But if you guess right, you're going to be paid pretty well there.
Yeah, and I mean, like, Jaden Reed's best games last year were when Christian Watson was out injured. Jaden Reed also like might primarily operate in the slot. We know that Watson is the big is definitely the biggest downfield threat on the team. We know that Jordan Love likes to throw the ball downfield. So I just kind of feel like, like I said, I think this one is just a dice roll on his health. And maybe it's more of the same. And, he's just an injury prone guy. But I think if he plays 16 games this year, he's going to be in the high end wide receiver 2 conversation, which is significantly better than what you're looking at in terms of his current cost.
All right. Well, I'm going to jump in because I got another wide receiver. And, who's a first round NFL draft pick, who is the fastest man of all time at the NFL Combine, who now gets to play with Patrick Mahomes. But I'm calling him a dynasty dud.
Oh, no!
Oh, yeah. We're talking about Xavier Worthy.
That's a spicy
so spicy. And I control the drop, so I get to do it now.
Why are your drops perfectly placed?
Yeah, it's called timing, Ryan. Comedic timing. Worthy is currently the wide receiver 28 on Keep Trade Cut, and he's viewed by many as the 4th overall pick in rookie drafts and the wide receiver 4 as well in that rookie class. And he's even in redraft leagues being drafted as soon as the 7th round, which is crazy to me. Let's just get the obvious out of the way. He's tiny. He's 5'11", 165 pounds. Now, small receivers we've seen are being able to succeed at a higher rate in the NFL, but this isn't just small. This is like shockingly tiny. And I have some concerns there. Obviously, the first and foremost, injury is always going to be an increased risk when you're that tiny. But on top of that his size actually impacts his play. In Matt Harmon's reception perception, he was in the 28th percentile for press going against press defense and the 44th percentile against man. Physical corners will and have been a problem for him, and he will now be dealing with more physical corners than he did in college. These guys are grown men where he was playing against kids before. So DBs are going to be focusing on locking him up at the line of scrimmage. I mean, we've all, I think, at this point seen to highlight him being thrown around like a rag doll or pinball at the line of scrimmage in the camp. It's crazy. You don't see any other player flying around like that. And yes, he's a fine route runner, and I can take that away. He's better than most speed guys are, but his hands are a bit suspect. Combine that with his size and diminutive stature, there's no surprise that he had an 18.2 contested catch rate, which was the lowest in the class. If he doesn't get full separation, he's simply not going to be making a play there. Going into this year, he is viewed also on the Chiefs as the best number 3 option in the offense behind Kelsey and Rashee Rice. Hollywood is also there. He does have an injury right now, so he'll miss some time. But when he's healthy, could potentially bump Worthy down to number 4. And we also associate Mahomes and the Chiefs with a ton of offense, but that hasn't really translated to fantasy points for all the players involved. Since 2020, the third option in this offense has never cracked the top 50 wide receivers. And the third option is typically a speed go type wide receiver like MVS or Mecole Hardman or Justin Watson. Juju was there too, not really a speed guy, but you get the point that the third wide receiver, not a super valuable role. They like it for the offense, and it works well for the Chiefs because it opens up the rest of the field, but it doesn't yield consistent fantasy points. But you may say, Worthy's more talented than those guys. I mean, he was a first-round draft pick. Maybe, but we don't really know that yet, and the Chiefs haven't really been great at smashing on their early draft picks with offensive weapons. We thought Sky Moore, who was a second-round pick, 54th overall, was going to be great. Mecole Hardman, second round, 56th overall. CEH was a first-round pick, 32nd overall. We thought they were all going to be smashes. And guess what? They are all basically droppable now in Dynasty. Think about how far they fell. And again, I think he'll be better for the Chiefs. I think they made this pick intentionally because it opens up the rest of the offense. They're relying more on the run game with Pacheco. Kelsey and Rashee Rice, with the offense really flows through. They dominate in the short and intermediary areas of the field because they have such a relatively low ADOT. So I think it's going to help the Chiefs very across the board, and the offense really click on all cylinders. And I do agree. Worthy is going to have some sporadic games where he puts up multiple long touchdowns and make me look like an idiot in those games, but the consistency will not be there. Even when Kelsey and potentially Hollywood depart, I don't see a world where they rely on Worthy to be a true target earner. I would be shocked if they didn't get another weapon to replace Kelsey when he retires, or get another wide receiver to take the Hollywood role after his 1 year deal. There's just no way I really see Worthy being more than really the number 3 option moving forward. And he's being valued where players have the future of potentially being wide receiver 1s, where I think Worthy's ceiling is potentially a wide receiver 2, but his floor is far, far lower. Kind of alluded to this before. I view him as a smaller and less talented Jameson Williams, who was even higher draft capital, and we see how far his value has dropped. And I see a lot of the same in Xavier Worthy. One more time.
That's a spicy meatball!
I got 2 things, Dave.
Dropping all the drops. All right, anyway, go for it.
First off, Jameson Williams is on his way up. Just going to leave that there. But
really not any further down, I hope.
Talking about wide receiver 2 for the Detroit Lions, Jameson Williams.
yeah. But not to put his
4th receiving option for the Lions.
Currently on my roster in Oakland Association.
But to put his size in perspective, he's 5'11", 165 pounds. He's basically me, and I definitely don't belong on an NFL field.
Imagine Ryan getting hit by an NFL defender.
I'd be dead.
You'd break.
He's not going to get hit because he's going to be too fast to catch.
Listen,
kind of like Tyreek. It doesn't really matter that he's small because he's faster than everybody.
First of all, do not use Tyreek is 1 of 1, and that was also a late draft pick, but no one can compare us to Tyreek. He is an anomaly. Worthy is not that. They've tried this, and there's like, oh, McCole Hardman's the next Tyreek. No, it doesn't happen. No one else is Tyreek. Worthy. It's not Worthy.
So I think that the difference between Sky Moore and Hardman is that Worthy isn't actually a good separator. And he's fast, but he knows how to get open. And I agree. I think it should be more sporadic. I don't see him being the number 1 or even the number 2 option. I think he's at best the number 3 option. But if there's anybody who could figure out how to use Worthy in the right way, it's going to be Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. That's where I see the upside. I don't see him having the upside as the 4th wide receiver off the board. I would far rather have BTJ or even Ricky Pearsall. but I could see the avenues where it could happen. I would not be betting on it. I sure as heck wouldn't be spending a 4th overall pick in a rookie draft for him.
That's right. Well, you can trade and get a decent amount for him because even though there are some skeptics, every league has people who are hyped up on him. I think in our league, someone traded up to get him as well. So a lot of value there. Any other thoughts? Any other, bonus ones? I know Jonathan Taylor was one that we talked about. I kind of bashed him last pod, so not going to do it again. But he's someone who
Jonathan Taylor. I feel like he's I feel like he's an easy sell right now. Like you always want to get out on these running backs before it's too late. That offense, I think there's more of a range of outcomes than people think, where Jonathan Taylor could not be used as much and they could not be productive with the running game. It just kind of has all the signs that point to where like he's probably not going to be there long term. And then when running backs change teams, value takes a big hit. You don't know what's going to happen. So that's kind of my take.
I agree. If you want my full take, go to last pod. I put on a nice 10-minute breakdown. But I agree. I think he's a sell. Now, we're going to move into a new segment. It's going to be a recurring segment. It is going to be the non-guaranteed lock of the week. Sorry, don't have a drop for it yet. Working on it. Maybe DJ Dirty Work can put something together for us. But because it is the preseason, it is the non-guaranteed lock of the season. And got some other exciting news. Guys, guess what? We joked about it before the past, but we officially have an ad read. Can you believe it? We're making it, guys. Quitting my job. But if you want to join us on any of the bets that we put out there, again, they're not guaranteed. You can just go along for the ride. We have to disclose this for the lawyers. There's no promises on any of these, but if you want to ride along, head over to our dedicated page at signupexpert.com/NSFW to sign up and check out all the best sports books or DFS in options in your area. This is all based on whatever state you live in. It shows all the different apps you can sign up for. It also shows you all the best promos that you can get for signing up, like FanDuel, which is what my bet will be on. If you bet $5, you get 150 in bonus bets, but there's a lot of other DFS options in there as well if that's more your style. But please feel free to sign up through our link. It'll be posted in our promo. We'll put it on socials all over the place. Or if you know us from the pod, just text us. I'll send it over to you. But yeah, sign up and support our pod. Really appreciate it. But with that, we're going to jump into our bets. Also, how cool is it that we have an ad read? I think it's so cool. Yeah, but Ray, why don't you give us your bet?
You're very non-guaranteed mortal luck.
No promises, but it's a lock. No promises.
Are you saying, Joey? You're saying you don't like the bet?
No, the lawyers told us to say it's not promise.
We can't say it's a lock. It's a non-guaranteed lock.
If I were betting, I would bet that the Eagles would win the NFC East. I think that the Eagles net have gotten better. Like, yes, they've lost Jason Kelce, but they've been drafting a lot on defense. They made some nice additions. They're bringing in Kellen Moore to coach up the offense. I think that this team is an actual competitor in the NFC, and a lot of people would say the favorites. I don't think I see the Cowboys as competition with them. They definitely got worse over this offseason. CD's not happy with his contract. I don't know where that's going. Like, yes, they still have a very good defense, but I don't think I'd put them in the same level of team as the Eagles. So another thing I want to look at is strength of schedule, right? So Warren Sharp does a really good job of this, and he looks at it in two different kind of sections where you look at the strength of schedule based on the opponents that you play, right? And they look at the projected lines and the individual win totals for their opponents, right? The Eagles have the 9th easiest schedule in the NFL, right? Pair that with net rest edge. So this is something that I like a lot. Looking at the rest edge that each teams have, I think is a really good way to kind of also think about start-sit decisions. Right, when you look at a team coming off bye, or you have a defense that's coming off a Monday night game and they're playing Sunday, you know, I mean, that those little things matter in the NFL. So the best net rest edge is the Ravens, which they have a crazy 16-day net rest edge, right? And net rest edge is the cumulative, right, of all the weeks. Where you have either negative days against your opponent or positive days, right? So the Eagles are tied for the second with a net rest edge of 12, right? So they actually don't play any teams off their bye, right? And they only have one game where they're rested for less time than their opponents, and that's the Saints, which I don't think anybody's picking the Saints to win that game. I think when you combine all those factors, I think it's very, very likely that the Eagles will win their division.
And what odds did you get that at?
So I just pulled it up right before we started recording at -140, which I think is pretty good.
That's right. That's worth it. Anything under -150 for season long, I'm typically into, so that works out for me. Although I wouldn't be doing that because, let's be honest, I'm betting on the Eagles. Giants fan here. Giants are going to surprise. Yeah, not guaranteed.
I think we can guarantee that the Giants are not going to surprise.
I'm not putting money on it. Ryan, why don't you give us your bet?
Yeah, so I wanted to come up with something I felt comfortable with. I think out of this group, I'm the least seasoned bettor. I don't know about Ray's betting tendencies, but Mine are pretty low. So I wanted to come up with something I felt good with. I went with Derrick Henry over 950.5 regular season rushing yards. It's minus 112 on FanDuel right now. I know what you're going to say. He's on a new team. He's a year older. He hit that dreaded 30 mark for RBs, but he rushed for 1,167 yards last year, and there isn't much competition at RB on the Ravens. I know what Dave's going to say. Lamar's the rusher there, and he'll steal some of his rushing upside, but he also should get better opportunities, even if he gets less opportunities. And not for nothing, but Gus Edwards rushed for 810 yards last year in the same situation with Hill and Mitchell behind him. And you can't tell me that the King isn't an upgrade, even at 30 years old, over Gus Edwards. So Sleeper has his rushing projection at 1,172, Fantasy Pros at 1,189. I know Vegas is usually a better indicator, but nothing is a given. Certainly not a guarantee, but I think it's a lock to me that Derrick Henry is going to rush for over 950 yards this season.
Yeah, honestly, the only way I feel like outside of injury that doesn't happen is that they move the ball so well that he's only rushing between the 20s and just scores a million touchdowns instead for my my redraft league. But yeah, I mean, he seems to be hitting that mark consistently. If Gus Edwards can get that close, I feel like Henry should definitely surpass it. But I'm going to jump in with mine. We kind of alluded to it before. This was the foreshadowing during the Roma Dunze breakdown, but I'm going with Caleb Williams over 3,500 and a half passing yards on FanDuel at minus 112. Now, Caleb Williams is already the heavy favorite to lead rookies in passing yards this year. And since 2010, which is 13 seasons, 10 of those seasons have featured a rookie eclipsing the 3,500 passing yard mark, with 12 of those rookie QBs reaching that mark over that span, because there were 2 that actually hit that mark in 2016 and 2021. 7 of those players were actually the first overall pick in the NFL draft, just like Caleb Williams. So 7 out of 13 years, which is more than 50%. And let me read you some of the names in that list. You had Andrew Luck, who has the record still at over 4,300 yards in 2012. Justin Herbert, who had over 4,300 yards in 2020. C.J. Stroud, over 4,100 in 2023. Cam Newton with over 4,000 in 2011. Then you had Jameis at over 4,000 in 2015. Mac Jones, of all people, with over 3,800 in 2021. Carson Wentz with almost 3,800 in 2016. Baker Mayfield with over 3,700 in 2018. Kyler Murray with over 3,700 in 2019. Dak Prescott had nearly 3,700 in 2016. Trevor Lawrence with 3,600 in 2021. And Sam Bradford, you guys remember him? Just broke the mark with 3,512 in 2010. So ran through that whole list. No, this has been said a lot. No rookie, at least first overall pick quarterback, has ever come into the league with a better situation from a weapon standpoint than Caleb Williams is coming into this year. And he is viewed by many as a generational talent for multiple years. And he's getting Mahomes-like comps. So it feels like this is a layup bet. And then you watch some of the plays that he makes in the preseason. I mean, non-guaranteed lock, but I have a hard time believing that he doesn't reach that mark outside of injury. So I took the bet myself already as well.
I mean, yeah. Plus, that's a fun one to ride too.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. Come with me.
I mean, if Sam Bradford can do it, then Caleb Williams got to do it.
That list, these QBs peak in some of these guys in the first season.
Literally,
Mac Jones, people. But anyway, thank you for that, Joe.
I wasn't in until I saw the list.
Oh yeah, you see that list, you're like, okay, this is like he can do it. Joey, break it down.
All right, so. I am going with a little plus money because I feel like we had a couple. I wanted to have one of our first non-guaranteed locks to be a plus money bet for those who are looking for a little more upside. I'm going with the Buffalo Bills to miss the playoffs at plus 140. that's the range. Plus 140 was the best price that I saw on Bet365 in New Jersey. I think 130, 135 is available. And
remember, signupexpert.com/NSFW to find the best
yeah,
price for you.
yeah. Sign up for all of them, to be frank. If you're really into sports betting, then shopping lines is a good way to go for long-term profits. So my concerns with the Bills, first and foremost, they have had a lot of turnover on both the offense and the defense. I think that losing Stephon Diggs, losing Gabe Davis, who, although we can joke about his Houdini acts for fantasy football, actually was a relatively impactful wide receiver for them, on sometimes a like alternating basis, but he was a pretty impactful player. I think that I personally have a little bit of a concern for Josh Allen's productivity from a fantasy standpoint without Stephon Diggs. I think that Josh Allen's like ascension to fantasy, the top, I guess, of the quarterback hill for fantasy football, kind of coincided with Stephon Diggs joining the team. I've also been having concerns about Josh Allen's the wear and tear that his body is taking. Let's put it that way. He runs quite a bit. He takes a beating, and it all over the last few seasons has turned into quite a bit of fantasy points. And we can only pray that it continues. But at the end of the day, right? Like at a certain point, he's going to start to wear down a little bit if he continues to take so much on his shoulders physically. So they've had injuries in the preseason thus far. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is out for several weeks. On the defense, linebacker Matt Milano is out for the season already with a torn biceps. They have quite a bit of other guys out there. Curtis Samuel, a new receiver who they're actually looking for. I'm assuming they're going to be looking for contributions from. Has a turf toe injury already. So I think that, and on top of all of that, they are in a very tough division. And Ray mentioned strength of schedule earlier. The Bills have the 23rd toughest strength of schedule. Meanwhile, the Jets have the 4th easiest, and the Dolphins have the 8th easiest. So I just think that in a situation where, last year the Bills really, really managed to just kind of sneak into the playoffs by the skin of their teeth. It's probably going to be a situation this year where they're fighting for a wild card. And I just think everything really, really needs to go right. And, if Josh Allen does, get banged up at any point, speaking of injuries, like Mitch Trubisky is their backup quarterback. He just got hurt in the last preseason game. So I just think there's a lot of ways this could go wrong for Buffalo. And then, last but not least, I think that coming up short so many years consecutively in the playoffs, I think that has a cumulative effect. And I think that this could be one of those years where if things don't get off to that strong of a start, then it could just be a down year for the Bills. So I personally like Josh Allen, have him in a couple different fantasy teams, and certainly not rooting for it. But I think at plus money, it's definitely worth a look, as they say. What do you guys think?
I feel like Ray's ecstatic about it as a big Jets fan. What do you feel? What are you feeling over there?
I wholeheartedly agree. I think that last year they snuck out a lot of wins where they probably shouldn't have. The team's got a lot of turnover. They're putting so much on Allen, who is going to have to run a lot more to make up for the lack of pass catchers and weapons that they have on that team. I don't think Curtis Samuel and Keon Coleman coming in is going to replace Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis for how much we give him crap. Like, he's an okay NFL player who contributed that offense. Like, that's going to be a lot to make up for. I think that it's going to put a lot more wear and tear on his body, and I would make that bet.
All right, as long as you do it through our link. All right. Well, those were our bets. Again, feel free to ride with us if you want to have some fun. Nothing's guaranteed, but those felt like locks. So, come along. And we're going to get into our final segment because, as we know, this podcast was created because of our league, the Nsfw Dynasty League. And this is our Nsfw Dynasty League Corner. Going to quickly shout out, we had a couple trades this offseason we wanted to just talk through real quick. So the listeners can kind of hear what's going on in the league, see what type of trades are going on, and get our feedback on it all. So we had one where Matt and Dan Rosinski acquired Brian Robinson, Luke Musgrave, and a 2025 first round. And again, we're a tight end premium. And Schluter acquired in return Jonathan Taylor. So, Ray and my is feeling towards Jonathan Taylor. I also personally love Brian Robinson as a sleeper pick this year. I think he's a good value with being overlooked. I think he's like outside the top 30 running backs, and I think he will easily beat that. So I actually love what the Rosinski's done, but I get what Schluter's also trying to do. He's trying to get back into contention this year. But where are you guys falling on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just too much potential value on the Rosinski side, whereas Schluter got Jonathan Taylor, and if anything goes wrong with Jonathan Taylor, he's in trouble. But a 2025 first is very valuable. Luke Musgrave, I mean, he could be a hit. And like you said, I think Brian Robinson is very serviceable. So I would lean the Rosinski side. I think Schluter's trying to go back-to-back and win it this year. So he wants Jonathan Taylor now, and he could get one amazing year out of him for sure. So I'd lean the Rosinskis, but I get where Schluter made the trade.
Yeah, I think I lean towards the Rosinski side too. And it's also because we'll see what happens with Schluter's team this year. But if he misses the playoffs, not to say that he's going to, but I think when we did our power rankings, he was kind of like middle of the pack to I would say like lower 40% for the three of us. And we're all idiots, so maybe that means he's going to win the league again. But
yeah, we were wrong on a lot of things last year.
If he ends up missing the playoffs, then that's a high first. Then, and I'm not as out on Jonathan Taylor as all of you guys are, but I think that.
Yeah, I mean, I can be wrong, and I have been many times. And if I'm Schluter had a very rough offseason for what happened with certain players. Could be turning it around, but that's how you go from a championship team to a team that's trying to fight again. But what do you think, Ray?
Oh, while I think that Jonathan Taylor is generally a sell, I don't hate the value that Schluter got because he's really not giving up a ton. He's giving up the first, but I don't think I think Brian Robinson's going to be a value this year, and Musgrave looks okay as a tight end prospect, but he's not really giving up a lot. These guys aren't going to contribute for him this year, and he's getting Jonathan Taylor, who could be a top 4, top 3 back. I think they're definitely still in the range of outcomes. But I actually pulled up his team in your league looking here, and
you have God access and sleeper.
Yeah. So I think that he probably could have used those assets to go after a kind of a difference-making wide receivers. I mean, he does have Neighbors, but if you're contending this year, do you really want to ride with him as your one? You know what I mean? Maybe take those assets and pair them with, I don't know, Keon Coleman, and go get, I don't know, Mike Evans. I'm not saying all those assets, but go get Mike Evans or T. Higgins or somebody from a rebuilding team like Dave's.
I'm right middle of the pack, man. I was second overall in the regular season last year. No, my team's in a weird spot. No, I think it was a fair trade all around. It just depends on where you're valuing players at. But I agree. Jonathan Taylor can absolutely smash, and if he does, that helps his team out big time. But we did have one other trade, and one of the guys on the pod actually had it. So it was Ryan over here. He acquired Ramondre Stevenson in a 2026 first with, again, Schluter, who's always slinging them out there. And Schluter got Kyron Williams, a 2025 third, and a 2026 fourth. So got Kyron and Jonathan Taylor. The guys clearly trying to load up the season. But I thought it was a good trade for both, personally. I feel like it's pretty fair. Kyron is one who kind of scares me beyond this year, but I think he obviously can smash this year as well. I'd be all in on him. And Ramondre, as a return plus getting that first, and it's 2 years out, so that first could actually be a bit more valuable depending on what happens with these running backs. But Ramondre is serviceable, so it still fills the void for you, Rye, as well, while loading up on some draft capital that I think you've been sneakily been doing lately.
Yeah, I mean, Ramondre just wanted to come home. We had him originally traded him away and then got him back. But
what'd you get when you traded Ramondre again? Was it Madison?
Well, we got Jameson Williams, who's on the way up. So
yeah.
But so I think we talked about it on the last podcast more. Kyron Williams, a little risky. I think he absolutely can be a league winner this year, but he also, it's not possible that he isn't a league winner and ends up not being that great. So we felt like Stevenson was a decent trade to get the first. And we don't really feel like we gave up too much in a 2025 third and a 2026 fourth. So.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I looked at Kyron Williams unders for my my bet for this week. Ultimately decided to pass because they weren't. They were already, I guess, modestly set to the point where I wasn't super enticed. But yeah, I mean, he's great when he's out there, but he's a little bit of an injury risk, and I just worry that if Corum gets an opportunity, then that could really impact Kyron's future. So yeah, I think that capitalizing. I mean, 2026. I think it's fair both ways, really. Like, I have Kyron in a dynasty where I'm also looking to move on, but I'm looking to move on to, like a young, kind of established, maybe wide receiver, rather than a draft pick. But getting a first round pick is solid return.
Yeah, I think that the value's fine. I just think that Kyron's the kind of piece you add when you have everything else and you are a contender already. I think that he kind of spent a lot of draft capital to get his team kind of equal to a lot of the other teams. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a couple elite teams in there right now. Joe's one of the scarier ones as well. Got a quick rebuild. But yeah, I mean, overall, solid trades. I like the action. Want to see a couple more before the season starts, but appreciate what the guys are doing in the league. Any other notes or comments or player news you guys want to say? I just hope that CeeDee Lamb and Ayuk get a freaking contract signed before the next time we record. But what do you guys got?
I got two trade offers in my inbox right now. I'm looking at them, and
we need the content, Joe. Accept.
Keep sending them along. I'm not especially enticed by either, but I still need to formally respond. And yeah, Are
you keeping them in purgatory out of spite? Like what?
No. I just as somebody who has traded with me several times in the past, this is how the operation goes.
I know it's brutal. Joe doesn't respond for like weeks.
I certainly stew for several days. No.
Even when it's obvious.
Yeah.
It's fine.
You know what it is too? And this is the last thing I'll say. When it's like several players for several players, that takes me a lot longer. Like if someone just offers me a 1-for-1, I can generally decide and respond on that like pretty instantly. But
And
when Dave sends you an offer, it's always like 4 guys for 4 guys, and I'm just like, I just don't have the
threading the
time.
needle here, man.
I do not have the time to evaluate whether or not this is a good trade right now. I'll come back to it.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. So that's but keep the trades coming, and I'm looking forward to the season.
That's right. Ray, what about you? Any parting words as the guest co-host we had today?
I do have to say, Dirty Work, the team in your league.
Oh,
I really love his. I love his team.
Yeah, it came out Sean. They're also Jets fans. He's Jets fans. Yeah.
Yeah. He's got a great core.
Yeah.
He just needs to figure out some. I think he needs one quarterback, but he's got some some draft capital.
It's a rake team.
It is a very
it's certainly a rake team.
It is. I like it. They're probably going to win.
Yeah, no, they're in the top 3 in our power rankings, so looking good. Yeah, last thing we need is them to have big heads. Damn it, Ray. Okay, we're cutting the spot off. All right. Well, thanks again for everyone listening. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Ray, so much for joining us for the pod, and go get in the Meglet Bowl. And thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
Nsfw Dynasty podcast.